Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending our session about the evolution of API management and emerging trends. I will be your host, and I'm Benjamin Bandali. I'm the account director for Nordics and Benelux, based out of Sweden. So thanks a lot for having me and the whole Gravitee uh, team that is here for API Days in Helsinki North. So before I try to predict the future together with you, I will try to do a little bit of history lesson here around APIs. So I will give you an introduction to API 1.0 that started out in the early 2000, around 2005, where the key technologies around that time was WSL in APIs. And WSL 5 can be summarized as web services description language, which was basically a standardization of APIs on top of integrations or ETL scenarios. So it was mainly used for SOAP objects. So what these APIs did was that it provided a robust and albeit framework for building enterprise level services. So of course there happened a lot of innovation, and that moved the timeline to API 2.0, which basically marked the start of the emergence of Swagger around 2010, which is what you can see on the screen here. And straight after that, in API 2.0, we also had the introduction of Open API specifications in 2015, which was the standardization of REST API description. So in this time period, we moved towards a more microservices architecture with emphasis on like containers and GitHubs, for example. So APIs more and more became easier to manage and integrate, which fostered innovation across the whole industry. Then in the 2020, we move onwards. We released what we call API 3.0. And the reason for API 3.0 was to get a standardization across enhanced security protocols and multiple protocols that APIs come with. So this was the integration for both synchronous and asynchronous communication in single platform, which is what we really are proud of here at Gravitee, that have been in the forefront for this. So what we talk about here is what we call about event native API management, which is really the emphasis for API 3.0, because APIs are now in modern age is more pivotal for real-time scalable and flexible integration across varied and complex environments. Looking into the future, and I will try to highlight what the previous API versions highlighted with the challenges. So API 4.0 is what I will refer to here. So really nice, I think Eric Wilde and Mark O'Neill from Gartner call this the great unbundling, or bring your own API gateway, which is really about continuing the evolution towards a more decentralized and centralized architecture. So we have more emphasis on API security and governance, which is really the backbone of this digital transformation going into API 4.0. And here at Gravitee, we see this as the future of API management, which is what I talk about when I talk about API 4.0. It is to be able to expose these event brokers, for example, Kafka, MQTT, RabbitMQ, etc., as APIs, so different type of protocol. But it is also to use the traditional API governance methodologies that we use for synchronous API, also for asynchronous API. We're also looking at a lot around multi-gateway. So this is what I talk about, unified governance across different parts of API management. For example, a universal API portal, right? Depending on the different technologies, and we see this more and more from matured companies that have APIs, that they have different technologies in place. So we call this the multi-gateway, because a platform should be not, or it should be agnostic to what protocol it does. So it is to support different API gateways as the backend resource. And of course, AI, right? How can we use AI and leverage AI to make API 4.0 and API management better, both from a consumer perspective and producer perspective? So let's first dig into event native, and I will give you a really good example here from a customer which is widely known, but I cannot show their logo or mention their name, but it's the biggest basketball association in the world based out of US, where they were faced with this problem where they collect a lot of data from their players. So they have IoT sensors in their shirt, where they wanted to share this data across different entities. So let's call it betting agencies or media outlets like news station, etc., but also different teams in this basketball league. So the problem that they faced was that all this IoT data, for example, the heart rate, the position on the pitch, the accuracy, etc., was stored in a Kafka broker. But it is not a beautiful architecture to have different entities outside your company to connect directly to your internal Kafka broker. So what they did was that they very beautifully added the Gravitee gateway in front, which basically had those different companies or entities outside of the basketball association connect to the gateway using the same method as they were using before as REST APIs. In the backbone, it was still Kafka running, but the gambling houses, for example, to predict different odds or better odds for their gamblers with this data, were able to get this data using REST APIs. So Gravitee was very fundamental here to provide this type of transformation from a real-time in a real-time scenario from a different protocol to a standard protocol, standardizing what we call the event native future here. Then I want to talk just briefly about multi-gateway and federation and what that is. So federation is very similar to what we see with different protocol. It is an emerging solution to embrace a common problem around diversity of different platforms. So for example, when a developer requests access to an API, depending on what platform, depending on the technology, it can have different time, it can be different, you look at different factors for that. So we see that companies must tap and capitalize into existing investments of the different technologies that they have, because it's not easy to do migrations to just one single platform for one single purpose. So we see a federation that is on the side, right? You have different platforms. So both customers, prospects, and partners are recognizing this trend. So it is to provide a unified and centralized governance layer across different technologies, which should be distributed across different data planes. So it is unification also for different teams, different vendors, different clouds, different clusters, different service meshes, etc., etc. So we see that more and more the industry is moving into this direction, and we need to come up with a solution to address this. And here I want to show you how easy and how the idea behind federation is to unify these common elements from that. So it makes sense, but it is hard to do. So we are working actively to, for example, be able to plug and play different technologies, let's say Apigee or Kong or MuleSoft, to be able to integrate all those APIs, keep your existing gateways with those technologies, but unify the interface under one plane into Gravitee. And then I just want to lastly also talk about AI and what we're doing around that. And AI, still we are figuring out. We have taken a bit of a step back to really understand where the industry is heading. But with the power of AI, we can hopefully provide better true service to our consumers. So for example, when you talk about AI and you come to, let's say, a developer portal where you want to request an API product, without you having those APIs defined as a business person, let's say I could simply pass what I want to get from an API, and that platform can build that API to me on the spot based on the requirements that I give him. That is a really good use case for consumers that, for example, have different requirements and different type of data that they want to extract. But we also talk about this for the providers. So for example, now we can automatize, or hopefully in the future, we can automatize SCADA generation or change detection across different APIs. We can even help the people who build the APIs, assist them in building them. So for example, you could ask the AI to how can I access different properties, and it would give you the code that you need to add or that expression to add to extract that API. So it is a truly exciting time to be part of this API 4.0 generation that is happening. So just to give you a summary of where we are as a company and what Gravitee does. So we are in the forefront of API 3.0 and 4.0. We are really disrupting the market. So we come from like a true open source background with the community and transparency, where we have a lot of strong values. And you can see that we have staff all across the world right now. We are not tied to any vertical, which you can see on the right-hand side, and working with the biggest organizations in the world. And we truly have very happy both customers and reviewers of our platform. So in 2023, we debuted for the first time in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and as a visionary, because Gartner also sees and appreciates and respects what we're doing in this space. So we have been quoted as providing the leading edge feature in each aspect of API management, and where our product strategy really sets the vision apart from our competitors. So we are the next generation platform, and we are being recognized for that. Also, quite interestingly, Gartner also releases a critical capabilities report. I don't know if you have seen that, but here Gartner really goes through each of the use case of what an API management should fulfill, where we will ranking top 3 in or top 6 in all of these different use cases, which there are only 3 vendors in the market to do. So as a comparison to that, we are very highly recognized for our technology as a whole, both on performance, on the easiness of use, on robust scalability, etc. The combination of all this, and which Gartner recognized us actually for this year, is that we have received the Voice of the Customer award, and we were the only vendor to receive this award, where Gravitee was 100% willingness to recommend from different customers and peers along the industry. And we are very proud of this award comparing to what the other platforms are doing. So just as a summary, I have presented to you how our analysts and how the market trends are going in the future, etc. We are understood by the Peter Boyle from Gartner and Forrested around this. So we truly operate both a differentiated solution, but also to across the upcoming need for API 4.0. So both to provide the full lifecycle management support of an API platform, to design, debug, monitor, publish, expose APIs, secure them. We do all of that, but we also support event native. So with Gravitee, you can do the full lifecycle support for an event streaming or asynchronous API side by side with how you do things. So both for protocol mediation, but also for exposing things like Kafka, like with a WebSocket or with a REST API, with the same security and governance as you were to have for a classic REST API. I also touched upon the multi-gateway before. So this is to uniquely support different gateways and different event brokers that we will be able to support in a single API management and governance discoverability layer for all your APIs. And yeah, to summarize, I mean, with Gravitee, I want to thank you. I mean, you can come to me if you have any questions. Thanks again for having me. I would very much hear your feedback around what we do in this space and if you think it's the right direction. Thanks a lot.